Joining me now is Dr. Denise Mari, a psychotherapist who prays with her patients, and Dr. Samuel Klagsbrun, a psychiatrist who says praying and counseling can be dangerous. We welcome you both to Good Day New York.
Thank you.
Let me start off with you, Dr. Mari. You actually take a patient by the hand and go to a house of worship and pray with them and try to get them to work out their problems?
Actually, no, that's not exactly what we do. At an appropriate stage in therapy, if a client should desire prayer between the counselor and the patient himself, that is something that we would provide. But actually, our counseling, Christian religious counseling or counseling in the Judeo-Christian tradition, actually has a very strong psychological component. We do as thorough and competent a psychological assessment as good, competent, secular psychotherapists and counselors do.
Or Dr. Klagsbrun, why do you think that this religious counseling is more dangerous than secular counseling?
A patient who comes into treatment is someone who is terribly vulnerable, who's seeking frequently guidance and answers, and the answers have to come from within the person, fully encompassing their own traditions, value system, religious interests also, but it has to come from within the person. And I think the danger of slipping into a religious mode is a way of avoiding, I think at times, working through problems. There's one other piece to this, which is, I think, important. A psychiatrist or a psychotherapist, I think, has to make sure that their own views aren't superimposed in any way, shape, or form on the patient. Whether we're talking about religion or being a Republican or a Democrat makes no difference.
Well, how do you do that? How do you separate it?
If the patient is the person who, by virtue of the discussion, expresses a full range of ideas and values and thoughts, and within that you pick up, let's say, on the religious component that is very meaningful to them, and you explore that with them, what you're doing is you're keeping pace with the patient's own values. If you're the one who brings that into play when the patient, in fact, has not brought that into play, I think you're imposing yourself.
Dr. Mari, why do you think the numbers are so high that these people are turning more and more to folks like you for their counseling?
Well, I think it comes down to the problems of our society today, that a lot of people are wrestling with personal behaviors of their own, things that they've done that they feel very guilty about. For example, sexual promiscuity, drug addiction, things in which they feel they've either harmed themselves or harmed other people. And so at some level, we have that level of guilt. And so they reach out for a counselor, they reach out for a friend, they reach out for God in order to find a way of expressing and confessing the problems that they feel that they have done in their life which really have harmed people.
Well, then why would someone pay you X dollars for a therapy session instead of going perhaps to a priest or a rabbi for that kind of religious help?
Actually, in most cases, the clients that we get are referred from clergy or religious. And what happens is, in working with us, we provide not only the psychological counseling, we provide referrals to psychiatrists, to physicians, but also not only would we incorporate spiritual direction into our work, we also, where appropriate, will refer a client to their own clergyman. So we may refer them to a minister, refer them to a priest or a rabbi. So we definitely incorporate the use of specialists and experts into our counseling.
One of the problems of that, I think, is that as soon as you incorporate religion in a more day-to-day way into your practice, you may invite a quick fix. For example, for an easy solution, the patient may think that because they're dealing with a religious person, forgiveness, for example, is the issue, when it may or may not be, in fact, and frequently is not. Especially if we're talking about people who feel a sense of guilt and sin, the response that they're looking for is some kind of forgiveness as opposed to working through the problem.
If they don't get the answer from this so-called higher authority, then what?
Then hopefully you go back to yourself and you say, okay, I better work on it myself.
Do you agree?
Well, actually, it's very important to work through. See, I agree with Dr. Klagsbrun on this, that the emotional components and the emotional underpinnings are very critical in the counseling, that you can't just jump into forgiveness. A lot of people will look, well, I'll forgive, I'll be a Christian, and actually ignore the psychological components that are going on.
All right, we want to thank you both for coming on the show, Dr. Mari and Dr. Klagsbrun. Thank you for coming to Good Day New York. Interesting subject.
And thank you, Cheryl. Thank you all. Thanks for being with us. We'll have much more of Good Day New York coming up after a break. Stay with us.